No one expected magic from the smallest contestants of the night. Barefoot, nervous, and holding worn-out props. These Filipino kids stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, carrying more fear than confidence. The audience smiled politely and the lights dimmed, because sometimes the biggest miracles come from the smallest hands and the bravest hearts. In a narrow alley tucked between rusted rooftops and tangled electric wires, the sound of laughter mixed with the distant hum of motorbikes. This was where the children practiced, not in a studio, not on a stage, but on cracked concrete, warmed by the afternoon sun. Their world was small, but their dreams were enormous. They had no magic shop, no glossy cards, no polished props. One boy used an old deck, missing half its cards, corners bent from years of use. A girl carefully practiced sleight of hand, with borrowed coins, each one precious, each one returned with gratitude. Their top hat was a faded schoolbag. Their mirror was a broken piece of glass, leaning against the wall. Yet every day, they showed up with hope in their pockets and belief in their hearts. Life hadn't been gentle with them. Some helped their parents sell food on the streets. Others looked after younger siblings, while adults worked long hours for little pay. Dinner was never guaranteed. But magic was something no one could take away. When their hands moved just right, when a coin vanished or a card appeared, the alley transformed. For a moment, poverty disappeared. For a moment, they felt powerful. Neighbors would stop and watch. Some smiled. Some clapped softly. Others shook their heads, wondering why children wasted time on dreams. But the kids didn't stop. They practiced again and again, fingers aching, hearts racing. Not because they wanted applause, but because they wanted to prove something. That talent doesn't ask where you come from. That dreams don't belong only to the rich. At night, they talked about America's Got Talent like it was another universe, a place with bright lights, kind strangers, and a stage big enough to hold their hopes. They watched clips on a cracked phone screen, huddled together, imagining themselves there. What if? One of them whispered. No one laughed. Because deep down, they all believed their magic wasn't perfect. Cards slipped, coins dropped, but something else never failed their unity. When one struggled, the others helped. When one felt afraid, the group stood closer. They learned early that kindness was their strongest trick, and togetherness their greatest illusion. Every practice ended the same way. They stood in a small circle, hands stacked, eyes shining. Not wishing for fame, not wishing for money, just wishing for a chance to help their families, to inspire kids like them, and to show the world that, even from the smallest places, something beautiful can rise. And in that forgotten alley, surrounded by hardship, the first real magic was already happening. Because before they ever stepped onto a famous stage, they had learned how to believe. The day had arrived. The children who had practiced tirelessly in a dusty alley now stood backstage at America's Got Talent, a world away from their humble neighborhood. The air smelled of antiseptic and excitement, mixed with the faint scent of nerves and sweat. Bright lights glared from every angle, cameras rolled silently on dolly tracks, and a sea of faces Judder's crew and a live audience waited just beyond the curtains. They clutched their props tightly. A deck of worn cards, a few tarnished coins, a tattered hat, simple tools that had brought magic to their alley but now felt fragile under the scrutiny of thousands. Their hands trembled, not from cold, but from the weight of the unknown. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum in their chests. One child whispered, "We can do this," though his voice wavered. No one answered. No one needed to. The energy between them was a silent agreement. Together. They were brave. As the announcer called their names, the floor beneath their feet seemed to shrink. The stairs leading to the stage felt impossibly steep. One girl almost tripped over her own feet, her eyes widening in panic, but a friend's gentle hand steadied her. The moment was fleeting, yet it spoke volumes. Fear could be faced, as long as they faced it together. And then they emerged. A wave of blinding light hit them, forcing them to squint. The audience was bigger than any market square they had ever performed in, bigger than any neighborhood gathering. The judges' chairs loomed like thrones, and cameras followed their every move. For a heartbeat, time stopped. The children froze, wide-eyed, unsure whether to take the first step. The audience greeted them politely. A mix of curiosity and polite smiles. Some whispered to each other, others fidgeted, expecting amateur mistakes from children who were obviously out of their depth. The air was heavy with expectation or, perhaps, judgment. The kids felt the weight of it, but they remembered the alley, the hours of practice, the sacrifices of their families, the laughter and tears they had shared. They inhaled deeply, letting that courage fill them. Music began, soft at first, then rising. The children moved forward, hesitating only for a moment before the first trick began. A coin vanished from a hand, reappeared behind an ear. Cards shuffled in a blur. The audience leaned in slightly, intrigued. It wasn't perfect, some mistakes slipped through. But the imperfections didn't matter. Because for the first time, these children weren't performing in fear, they were performing with heart. And at that moment, backstage chaos and bright lights faded. All that remained was courage, wonder, and the tiny, fearless hands of children determined to share their magic with a world that had never expected it. The music swelled, carrying the children forward as if the stage itself were guiding their small feet. Their magic wasn't. Flawless cards slipped from trembling fingers. Coins rolled awkwardly across the polished floor, but something deeper began to happen. The audience, initially polite and distant, leaned in. It wasn't just a performance anymore. It was a story unfolding before their eyes. Each trick carried a silent message of hope. Every flick of a wrist whispered courage. The children's smiles, wide and genuine, revealed the joy and struggle that had shaped them. They were no longer just kids performing illusions, they were messengers of possibility. The audience sensed it instinctively. There was a fragility to their movements, a rawness that spoke louder than any perfectly executed trick ever could. One boy knelt on the stage, hiding a coin in his hand and letting it disappear in a blink. When it reappeared behind the ear of a fellow performer, the audience gasped, but not because of skill alone. The act symbolized trust, teamwork, and shared dreams. A girl shuffled cards with meticulous care, the worn edges of each card a reminder of the long nights in a cramped alley where their magic had first been born. Every imperfection told a story, every stumble revealed courage. Judges exchanged glances. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, frowning at first, a hint of skepticism in his eyes. But slowly, the frown softened. The children's magic wasn't flashy or polished, it was honest, heartfelt, and human. It wasn't just about tricks. It was about resilience, love, and the power of belief. He, like the audience, began to see beyond the props, beyond the stage, to the truth behind the performance. The children began to move together, synchronizing their gestures, their laughter echoing like music itself. One child performed a simple, vanishing act, but instead of a rabbit or card, he revealed a small note. Dreams are for everyone. A hush fell over the theater. The message wasn't just seen, was felt. The audience realized that this performance transcended entertainment. It was a reminder that greatness isn't born from privilege, but from heart, effort, and courage. The energy on stage shifted. The kids, once nervous and uncertain, now moved with quiet confidence. Their magic had become more than tricks. It was a bridge connecting to worlds the hardships they had endured and the hope they carried for the future. Parents in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. Children clutched hands with siblings, inspired to dream. Even the most stoic judges leaned in, moved not by spectacle, but by spirit. In that moment, a profound realization spread through the theater. Magic isn't only about illusions, it's about the ability to touch hearts, to inspire courage, and to remind people of the simple, universal truth that kindness, determination, and hope can create miracles in the unlikeliest places. By the time the final card was revealed, and the music softened, it wasn't applause. They had earned it, was off. The children stepped back, exhausted but glowing, having shared something far greater than a trick. A piece of their souls, and a lesson that would linger in every heart that witnessed it. The final act approached, and the children's hands trembled once more, not from fear, but from the weight of everything they had carried to this moment. Their journey from a cramped alley in the Philippines to the dazzling stage of America's Got Talent had been more than miles traveled. It had been miles of hope, sacrifice, and unspoken dreams. Every misstep, every sleepless night, every coin and card they had practiced with, now mattered more than ever. The audience watched in anticipation. As the children formed a small circle on the center of the stage, their props lay ready, but it wasn't the props that held the magic, it was the message they carried. The lights dimmed, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. The children's eyes met briefly, sharing silent encouragement. A bond forged not just in magic, but in shared struggle and unwavering belief. Then the first illusion began. A coin vanished into thin air, and reappeared not behind a person, but inside a small, folded note. One by one, each child performed their trick, each culminating in a similar revelation. Simple messages written with hope and kindness. Believe in yourself. Kindness creates magic. Dreams are for everyone. The audience leaned forward, realizing that the performance was no longer about entertainment, it was about humanity itself. The judges were visibly moved. Simon Cowell's stoic expression gave way to something rare, genuine emotion. He clasped his hands together, his eyes glistening as he leaned forward, utterly captivated. The applause started softly, then swelled, filling the theater with a sound that felt like both awe and love. It wasn't just admiration for talent, it was respect for courage, resilience, and a heart full of purpose. One of the children took the final step, performing a delicate card trick that ended with a single card rising into the air. On it was a message for the audience. Small hands can do big things. Gasps echoed through the room, followed by tears and cheers. The audience rose to its feet, some clapping, some wiping away tears, all deeply moved. In that moment, the line between performer and spectator blurred. Everyone felt connected to something larger than themselves: hope, compassion, and the undeniable power of dreams. Backstage, parents and friends cried quietly. Proud, not because the children were on a famous stage, but because they had shared the truest magic of all: the courage to dream and the willingness to inspire others along the way. The children themselves looked at one another, eyes shining with joy and relief. They realized they had done more than perform, they had transformed hearts, proving that generosity, bravery, and love can create miracles far greater than any trick or illusion. As the final note of music faded, the theater was filled with a warmth that went beyond applause. The children bowed, exhausted but radiant. They had shown the world that magic wasn't only in sleight of hand, It was in courage, unity, and the simple act of believing in something bigger than yourself. In that fleeting, powerful moment, the world witnessed something extraordinary. The smallest hands could create the biggest magic. The echoes of applause still lingered in the grand theater as the children stepped off the stage. Tiny hands clutching their worn props and hearts swelling with something far greater than the fleeting thrill of performance. They were no longer just performers. They were bearers of hope, proof that courage and kindness could shine brighter than any spotlight. The journey from the dusty alleys of their neighborhood to this glittering stage had transformed them. But it had also transformed everyone who had watched. Backstage. The air buzzed with congratulations, hugs, and whispered awe. Crew members, usually focused on logistics, paused to smile at the children's radiant faces. Judges approached with warmth in their eyes, their earlier skepticism replaced by admiration and genuine respect. Simon Cowell, known for his tough demeanor, knelt to speak with them, his voice soft and sincere. "You've shown us all what true magic is," he said. The children, usually shy and reserved, smiled shyly, realizing that the world had seen not just their tricks, but their hearts. Outside, the cameras captured every moment of the children's reunion with their parents and siblings. Tears of pride and relief flowed freely. Some parents clutched their children tightly, feeling the weight of years of struggle and sacrifice lift, if only for a moment. The children had not only amazed judges and audiences, they had reminded their families and the world that dreams could bloom even in the most unlikely places. As they walked toward the exit, one of the children glanced back at the stage. The bright lights, the cheering audience, and the grandeur of it all seemed almost unreal. Yet, in that moment, they understood the truth. The magic wasn't in the illusions or the applause. The magic was in the courage to show the world who they were, the generosity of their spirit, and the belief that even the smallest hands could create something unforgettable. The story of these children would ripple far beyond the theater. Clips of their performance would be shared across the globe, inspiring other kids who had never had the chance to dream big. Social media lit up with messages of admiration and hope, reminding everyone that talent and heart were not measured by wealth or circumstance, but by determination and love. The children had become symbols, not just of magic, but of possibility, kindness, and perseverance that evening. As the children returned to their modest homes, they carried more than props and souvenirs. They carried a renewed belief in themselves and their dreams. The neighborhood alley where they had practiced seemed smaller now, yet filled with new meaning. They had learned that magic could be found not just on stages or in tricks, but in courage, selflessness, and the ability to touch lives. And as they drifted off to sleep, hearts still racing from the day's wonder, one truth lingered in their minds and souls. Greatness is not measured by fame or fortune, but by the love you share, the hope you inspire, and the courage to believe in the impossible. In that quiet, tender moment, the world seemed a little brighter. And for these children, the future once uncertain shone, like the stage lights that had, for one unforgettable night, illuminated their dreams.